All right, we have here is a Crossman spring-powered Walther P99. I'm gonna take this thing apart, and let's just move this up a little. All right. First things first, you want some various little screwdrivers. Find that the number 1, number 0. That's pretty much all you really need. 1.8 millimeter might work too. Alright, so first things first, you're going to need to take the slide off. So, what I would recommend is when you, actually first, take your mag out. Yeah. Bring the slide back. You'll have this piece here. Some people just do it with their fingers. I just, boom, like that. Simple. Round came out. So that's why you take your mag out first. And definitely you want to clear it. And, yeah. And make sure that it's nice and cleared. Okay, now we're going to take this piece here. Now what that piece does, and it took me a while to figure it out, is it holds this piece in place. See how this piece is going through the slide right now? There's a part that sits back in here in a slot, which is lowered by this. So now the slot's no longer grabbing it. You're going to hold your slide carefully. It's on safety. Put it on fire very carefully. Pull the trigger. And you're going to have to depress the slide release on the side. That's the slide release over here. So now, you have the slide off. So, this is the part that you're seeing in most of the videos that people have about this particular thingy. Little pieces there. And the plunger spring. This is sort of a combination of, I don't exactly say an extractor, but more like a loader. This part here slides in there and kicks that out. So you want to know what each of your pieces does. Now we get to the fun part. Alright, so I'm gonna, for this one, on the back here, we have a pin. We're just going to use the bigger screwdriver. And all you have to do is just push the pin through. I have to wiggle it a little bit. If it doesn't go through one way, you can try pushing it through the other. And sometimes that works. It can be a little stubborn. There you go. So that pin there holds this piece, which has a weight in it, makes it feel heavier. So we'll just set those off to the side where they're with each other. As far as your mag goes, first of all, you want to expend any remaining rounds that are in it. Then there's a little button on the bottom here. You hold that down, slide this forward. Carefully with your finger, keep your finger there, because that spring is going to try to launch this. So here's the little button that you just press down. I'm going to stick that over here. Bring your slide or your spring out for the mag, and then this is the feeder that feeds the BBs towards the top. And there's a weight inside there, which gives it some heft. It's like a dive weight or something inside. I'm going to stick the barrel over here. And you generally want to keep all the pieces that go with each other in the same area. It just makes it easier to reassemble it instead of jumbling them all into sections. Now there's a little pin here for the magazine release. And just push that through. the magazine release will just slide out the back there. So it has that little spring that, so when you press down on it, it goes back. Okay, and then that's the pin for the magazine release, so we'll keep those over there. A little tiny one is good for this part here. There's a tiny little pin, and that basically keeps your actual trigger piece that you're touching on there. You can just leave the pin in it like that. You know, it's may not necessarily always come out every time. So I still have not figured out how to get this assembly out. I've tried using this pin here, which I think is connected to the safety somehow. I've not been able to push it through. I've tried releasing that thing, and if anyone knows how to do this part, you know, take apart this part of the gun. If you know how to do that, leave a note in the comments or send a link to a video of how to get that part out. But in the meantime, we're going to get to this fun bastard right here. This thing is a nightmare if you don't know what you're doing, which I didn't just a few minutes ago when I was doing it for the first time. You want to take that pin out. That'll hold the entire assembly in place. So when you take this out, note that as you take it out, first of all, there's a little slip over here that this part's going to be in. Also note that your trigger armature here, what that's going to do, I don't know how well you can see this, but this little part right here gets depressed down. That's the thing that's going to hold the plunger in place, like the part that actually cocks back. There's a little spring right here where the armature goes inside the groove. Han, get down. Of course the cat tries to jump up. And there's also this other little thing that almost sort of looks like a trigger there, and that essentially extends this armature. Why they didn't just make the armature longer, I don't know. It would seem like you would, but maybe that's because they wanted a spring so that it would push this back. I don't know. Yeah, so that little piece there, and like when we take this out, we'll hold it in place there. Notice the spring. This is what drove me nuts trying to figure out where this spring went. It goes over the part that will have the pin going through it. So like the pin would be coming through the gun and sticking through there and keeping it in place. That spring, see, as soon as it comes out, boom, it springs loose. And then this thing, what I was calling the other little trigger, these things were driving me nuts. So this spring here, it has a little protrusion, and you'll notice there's a tiny little hole in this thing. See? Of course it flies right out. Boom, 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 boom. Here. So yeah, see? So you want that little part to be there. This little hook part, that's what's catching the armature over here, connected to the trigger. And then, so this is the side that will have the armature and spring and this little doohickey, which, by the way, you'll want to notice there's sort of a brass looking pin. This piece goes in there. Actually goes in like that. See how the curvature there, it fits there. So when the arm presses back on this, you'll notice it lowers the little catch over here. See that? So you have that out. Now, you'll notice there's another spring right here. This is a very tough spring. It's there's a lot of force on it trying to resist you. I have found that this sort of medium screw that I'm using happens to fit inside there just perfectly, and that'll take the gold pin out, or whatever you want to call it. Then that spring sprang right out. So yeah, so when the gold piece is in there, the actually it'll be the other way around. It'll essentially be like that, and you would have it tucked in there. Of course, you'd have to put the spring in first and then put the pin in, which that's the tricky part, is trying to get enough pressure on it while simultaneously pushing a pin through. If you can get a buddy to help you, that might work, or just deal with it. Now, the other thing, as you can see, that little armature, which you know, this piece would press down on and all that stuff. Now that it's free of the spring, you notice it still pivots. Well, we have another peg here, or pin, whatever you want to call it. And we'll just take that medium screw gun, boop, right through. So there. That's that little piece that'll catch and swivel up and down like that. This is the part that swivels. Notice there's a wide part and a thinner part. The wide part will, see, this part here faces the front of the weapon. This will go on the left side there. And when it goes through there, it's going to hold this thing in place. And that's what this is swiveling on. So, then there's also another piece here. Oh, there it goes. This is the little warning thing that tells you whether or not if the gun is currently cocked back. And it has that little protrusion that goes through the back plate right there, like that. Lets you know that it's currently cocked. So, little spring there, you know, this rod that the spring goes over. So like I said, this is about as far down and disassembled that I've gotten the weapon. I have not yet figured out how to get this assembly out, which has this part, the control arm, the safety, and all this other stuff. Not figured out which one of these pins does the trick. I do know that there's this pin. There's a pin right in front of the slide release thing. Yeah, so there's that pin there. But even after you remove that, like, I haven't. Yeah, and if I try to, this thing won't even go through. Like, it's. I'm pretty sure it's part of the safety. There must be another release of some sort somewhere, but I don't know where it is. So anyway, I think this was the right one. Yeah, should be. Alright, so we'll stick that through. I don't even know what it's really holding down right now. But we'll want it in there anyway. Okay, so now, our little nightmare piece here. This thing plagued me for about an hour until I figured out where all the pieces went. Okay, first things first. We want to get this little piece in there. We stick that there. Have this peg go through. I hope you can see this. Yeah, I'm going to raise this up just a bit. Okay. So get that peg in there. So now this piece will be able to swivel. Here comes the fun part. I got to get this spring in. Like I said, this is a little nightmare piece, mostly because the spring is pretty strong, and it of course wants to keep twisting around in the wrong direction. So now, keeping in mind we want the hollow end. This brass piece has a hollow end and then a little hole in there. I don't know why that little hole's there. Maybe it's just for air pressure release. But you want the hollow side to be facing towards this little armature. So on the right side of the gun. This is where it becomes really fun. Let's get that out. All right. The other thing is you don't want this spring to end up getting jammed in there like that. You don't want that. So you're going to be fighting this quite a bit. I've actually found an interesting trick that seems to work. What you're going to do is you're going to take this one, which should be able to, yeah, so it should be able to fit over that. I'm going to stick that through here. It has a little bit of play, so you can use it to grab the spring. So now, see, the spring is grabbed, it's in place. Slip that pin over, and then we'll, of course, now the spring wants to scooch over and it's going to try to push through. So take this, just pop the spring back in place. We want it to be over on the side. We want this piece up. And push that through again. Like I said, this is why this piece is a nightmare. It just has to be finicky. There we go. Okay. So now, of course, it's still being a nightmare. There we go. Oh. I hate these types of springs. Okay, so I'm going to have to depress the spring down a bit as I get this through because it's catching on the brass pin. It's twisting again. Okay. And this is such a nightmarish little piece. Of course, if it was in a 3D program, they, you know, like World of Guns disassembly or something like gun disassembly, this would have been done in like a couple seconds, if not faster. But that's a video game. It's not real. Okay, now we got that piece in there. I'm gonna take this piece, stick it on there. Boom. Like that, and you want to have it flush. This part is going to stick out. That's okay. That's normal. And I'm just going to scooch the spring over towards the left side of the gun as much as possible, just so it doesn't jam up in there again. As you can see, I have it scooched over. So you want this, the top part, you want it to be as flush against this piece as possible. You want this piece over towards the left side as much as possible. So now that you have that, you'll want to, of course, that's not the way it goes. Here we go. Or, nope, that was right. No, it wasn't. Boom, and boom. So, there we go. Just test it, make sure it works. Okay. So now we have that little piece there, and we're going to need, so notice the armature will rest in here. That's why you want, you know, that area to be flush. So see, the armature will eventually push back and do that. But in order for it to go back to the neutral position, we need yet another spring. So we have this little guy, and you'll notice this protrusion here where it goes 90 degrees. I'll just do that. So see, it's inside the little teeny hole on that piece. Then you'll have the actual spring part here. Oh yeah, and make sure that this piece is flushed as much, like it should be almost completely flush with that. So then your spring will rest around the pinhole there. And when you put it in, I'm trying to do this in such a way that you can see it. Okay, you'll notice there's a little groove right there that's going to catch on these parts here. So you want to line up the groove as much as possible. Meanwhile, you want to keep that spring in place. And you want to get that on there. And if you do it just right, say this, boom, in there like that. And so stick the pin in there just so it doesn't come loose. So that would be fun, trying to put that spring in there again. I've noticed on my weapon it goes better if you push it in on the left side. So look at that. Just right in, no problem. The other side was just resisting. And you just press on there, try to get it, yeah, so it's nice and flush. That's just for, you know, nice feeling. Doesn't have to be super flush, but it just feels better. Alright, so now when you put that trigger piece on, you notice that little extractor and then the actual trigger thing here are separate, but they both have a hole that pin needs to go through. Now remember, my pin I still have attached on here. Yours will probably have come off, which might make things a little bit more difficult, but just deal with it. And want to get through the first hole if you can, and then try to get through the second one once you have it. I'm just going to take the pin out. It seems to be, there we go, a little bit jammed. And we'll just put the trigger assembly on there. Okay. So you have a whole lot of holes that you have to line up. Whole lot of holes. Of course, the pin's got to be freaking small. Probably no. Keep snagging. I'm going to do this off screen here, and it's kind of hard doing this reaching over. Okay. Jeez, this thing just does not want to cooperate. I probably shouldn't even have removed the trigger, since I'm not going to be able to take out the assembly at the moment. Okay. That looks pretty lined up. Sounds like I got a second snag. No! I missed it. You know what? I wonder. Okay, this one's small enough that I can stick it through there. This might help quite a lot in lined up. To bust out an even smaller one since my small one's already occupied. Just push that through there. Jeez, these pins really get stuck in there good. Jeez. I didn't have this much trouble with it the last time. Alright. Okay, now that I have it lined up and held in place, just a matter of pushing it through at the same rate. Lower this. Okay. Just push the pin through there. Meanwhile, my cat is attacking my feet. I'm glad that I trimmed his claws. Boom. How about that? Perfectly, just about. There we go, perfectly flush. All right, notice, here, one, it's probably too low. There we go. So there, got that going. Gonna put the magazine extractor in, or release, whatever you want to call it. You'll want it so that the spring is facing upright. It'll go down like that. So, may have to feed it in through one side or the other here. It's just whichever seems to work. Just go with it when it works. I'm going to stick my finger up and then just guide it in. Like making love to a woman. Nah, just kidding. I see you, little troublemaker. Trying to photobomb my video. Alright. Okay, and I believe this was the correct pin. There we go. Boom. And this one's always very stubborn. You have to push it through a couple times from both directions. Some of the other ones cooperate right away, other ones are very finicky. As finicky as that troublemaker. Alright. And just so this is out of the way, we'll put the part of that handle piece in there and stick that peg in. Again, just use your thumbnails to push it in. If you don't have thumbnails, you should grow some. They are incredibly useful to have instead of little nubby bits of flesh. I'm not saying grow them long or anything, just enough so that you can use them. Okay, that's checking out. Have it on fire at the moment because you want it to be that way, and we're gonna. So notice right here, see those little pieces right there? There's a little stop, and when you bring it down, you'll see that stop clears. See, so now there's. See that? See those little L shapes right there? I believe it was this piece here, yeah. So So when you put this piece together, remember the little O-ring has a groove on one side and no groove on the other. The groove is where the spring is going to rest. So when this thing is in there, it's going to be in like this. You know, the slide's going to hold the front end there. And this piece will essentially rest kind of yeah, it'll sort of rest in there, and this thing will keep it from sliding forward. So that's what this piece does. Is it just holds that plunger in place. All right. So now we have the slide. This is the front end. We are going to, first of all, this you'll see that piece. That's the part that actually gets the air for you and whatnot. And it's gonna give you some good fun for firing that stuff. Okay. And you'll see on the back here, there's a little knob to raise, and that's going to go there like that. See, it'll just fit in there. And it just keeps it from spinning and guides it properly. And boom. That just slides in. You want the fin up. Barrel. Actually, you want to put the barrel in first, I believe. I guess it doesn't really matter too much because it will slide. So there. Okay, and then this piece, you want the wider end to be there. Compress that down so that it rests like that. Okay. Then just slide it into place. You want that spring to go over that little piston. And now here, actually I think I have to have that down one more notch possibly. I don't think so. This part gives me a little trouble every now and then. And there goes my spring. Okay. Alright, so now, once you have it flushed, flushed like that, it's wanting to be really annoying right now. Because I'm filming, that's why. See, you don't want that part to be sticking out like that. Which leads me to believe that it's not sliding in properly. Why is that catching? Is it catching on? I have this lowered all the way. You know what? There we go. Yeah. There's two notches there. You want it to be on the lower notch. That's why. Alright. That there. There we go. So now, once it's pretty much flush with the barrel, like that, so just use your finger, hold it in place, boom, put that there. See that piece holds that from protruding out. And just keep it there, and then slide that back a little. Just stick that piece in there. Now for your mag, this little angled thingy will only go in one way because it has a little fin on it. That fin will slide in. I do that just so you don't accidentally put it in the wrong way. Put the spring in. And this little doobie dabber, doesn't really matter which way it goes in as long as it fits and goes down. And just hold it in place with your finger. Slide that on. Boom. There you go. And just pop a couple rounds in. Put the mag in. Always seems to give me some trouble on that first cock. That's the other thing. If you want to release it without doing damage to your weapon, dry firing it, like pulling the trigger right now while there's nothing in it, that actually does do some damage to the components. It's not much, but over time, if you keep doing that, it will wear it out faster. So it's better if you put some tension on it. Okay, it didn't do it for some reason, but normally like that. And that's like what you do with the real one. That's how you uncock it. You just guide it into place. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, they might have been sticking up a little too far or something. There. Stick it off to the side. Put it in. There we go. And okay, the ball did not go in there. There we go. So there you have it. But awesome weapon. Nice thing about the spring ones is there's actually two benefits to it. One, you don't need to keep buying CO2. Second is every time you have to manually pull the slide back, which usually means you have to lower the barrel of the weapon so that the gravity feeds the balls into the barrel. And because of that, that means you don't just simply aim at your target, steady the weapon, and just keep pulling the trigger like you do with electric ones or CO2. This means that you're essentially doing a cold bore shot every time. It means that you have to make your aim count every time, and you get to be a lot better of a shot using the spring power than you do with a semi. Semi-autos, yeah, they're fun. Like if you actually want to go out in the field and have airsoft wars, go with the semi. Because obviously you want that rapid fire that you can do. But for target practice, to get your aim true, like when you first draw the weapon and get that first shot to be just right, go with the spring power. It's a lot cheaper for training because you don't have to keep buying CO2. And these actually hit really hard. You may not know this, but I can shoot out light bulbs with this thing from about 30 feet away. It's not that bad. 10-yard distance, shooting out light bulbs. So it's fairly quiet compared to like a CO2 or even the real thing, obviously. But yeah, I used to have some fun. We'd see burned out Christmas tree lights. We'd shoot at them. Our own lights, of course, not someone else's. Don't ever shoot at someone else's property. They're not going to take kindly to it. I'll guarantee you that one. So anyway, yeah, it's a good solid weapon. Came as a kit. I think I got it for like 25 or 30 bucks. Not sure. I had like a Dick's Sporting Good or something. So anyway, that's oh, and it's also all plastic. So if you're thinking about using one of these to bypass the gun registration laws by using a frame that is an airsoft frame to make the real weapon, because typically with a pistol, the frame is what's considered the weapon and it has to be registered. There is a way to get around it, but that only works for metal frames. Don't ever even try it with a plastic one. If you are going to do that, you'll end up blowing your hand off. So Just if you're getting plastic ones like this, just stick to Airsoft. So, all right, that's a wrap.